lot of people, and we're being recorded. A lot of a lot of people are not aware that there are homeless children, and for a long time, I myself was not aware, because you see a lot of the adults on the street, they're more visible. You know that you have shelters in your city, like we know this, but the children, they're in school. They're in the classrooms every single day. It wasn't until my second to last year teaching high school that I didn't know I had a child in my classroom that was homeless. I did not know I had a student that was in my classroom who was sleeping in a car with his mother. Until he came in, his behavior started to change. You know, I was Miss Harris. I was singing and dancing lessons. I had teenagers all day long. And so when I saw this child sleeping in class, I said, okay, well, you know, what's going on? One conversation led to, you know, learning about his housing situation, looking for resources locally to help serve this child. And there were little to none. A lot of them were either 18 and up or for veterans or whomever, but we didn't have a lot of local services directly for children that were experiencing homelessness. And so instead of complaining, we found a solution. At least we can give the students supplies, school supplies, toiletries while they're in the classroom. The focus of Living Grace is to provide academic support for those children. And so this whole idea, organization, passion, advocacy came from one child. Having one conversation with one child, and we took it from there. But again, going back to building your circle of support, there are organizations in every community who serve the homeless population, or people who are experiencing various levels of poverty. Connect with those organizations. Figure out, one, how you can be a service to them, but then two, how can you all build a strong partnership? It literally starts with one conversation, one email. Hey, I'm doing this work. I'm passionate about this. How can we connect? And that's really locking arms with your community partners. That's what this is all about. For example, if we're giving school supplies and toiletries, but there's another organization that their main focus is providing young girls with pads. Well, we partnered with them, and now we get our sanitary items from them. That's just an example. Cannot do this work alone. Identify your supporters and your champions. Your supporters are going to be those people who are on the ground, grassroots organizations who can really elevate and amplify your cause. Because a lot of people, they want to support you, they just don't know how. So it's our responsibility to kind of give people that step 1, 2, and 3. If you're passionate about youth homelessness, here's how you can support. So identify your supporters. The second thing in building your circle of support is your champions. Those locally elected officials or local grass tops leaders who can really get some things moving. Because what I know for a fact, being on both sides now, you can rah all in the streets, and you can be as loud as you can. You can be on every news station, you know, screaming about youth homelessness. You all need to be involved. You all need to serve these students. But if there's not a policy in place that is enforcing people to do certain things, or to hold people accountable, the work will be in vain. And so it's important to have both those supporters, people who can elevate and amplify your voice, your advocacy, and then secondly, identify those champions. As an elected official now, it is our responsibility to respond. We were elected by the people, we serve the people. That is our job. If you are a good elected official, you will respond to all of your emails and your phone calls. But as constituents and community members, there's some stigma that I don't know where it came from, that elected officials are not approachable. You can reach out as many times as you want to your elected officials to get your point across, to get them to advocate for your cause. When I say I get emails all day long, I get them all day long, and I respond to all of them because that is my duty. So get into the habit, if you have not done so already, connect with your local school board members. Connect with in Memphis, we have 2 governments. We have city and county. Connect with your county commissioners, your city councilmen, whatever your local government looks like, whoever your representative is for where you live or where you serve, build a relationship with them. When I say it goes a long way, I mean, it's invaluable. A few years ago, I started to reach out to, at the time, my current school board member, county commissioner, city council, state rep, state senator. All of them knew me. Now, they might have had different views than I did, which is fine, but everyone needs to serve children. children are all of our responsibility. So it doesn't matter what side of the aisle that you sit on, everything impacts our children. So start to build those relationships with your local leaders, your champions, and of course, get your supporters. The second thing I want to talk about is passing the policy torch. And I'll give an example of my position now on the local school board. So Shelby County Schools is the largest district in the state of Tennessee. I think it's top 25 in the country. We have 100,000 students in Shelby County Schools. So 100,000 students I wake up every day on my mind that I'm responsible for caring for and taking care of. I made it very clear and I was very transparent when I was running and now seated. I'm focused on our children that are identified as homeless, that are experiencing various levels of homelessness. So everybody can tell you, anything dealing with that, talk to Shalia. She knows all about it. With the support of Patricia and the SchoolHouse Connection team, was able to pass really my first resolution, my first policy, being my first year as a school board member a couple months ago. So now our entire district is responsible for building out this accountability framework for how we serve students that are protected under McKinney-Vento. That was a huge win. I literally got off the phone before this call with our chief of student affairs. And he said, Ms. Harris, we found another hotel and it has 26 families in it that are homeless. And here's how we're gonna serve them. We were able to get $1.8 million into the district specifically to serve students that are impacted by homelessness. So that was a huge win. When you put a light on something, and you draw people in and you share your passion, it gives them buy-in. It gives them responsibility. It holds them accountable. So that was one of our huge wins. I was going to share it earlier, but I was going to wait until I got to this point. But we do have a McKinney-Vento accountability framework in Shelby County Schools, and we will get quarterly reports for how we are spending our federal dollars. We'll get quarterly reports on how many students we serve. Where are they in the city, what schools they're in, and that'll help us build that circle of support per district. For example, if there's a large church across the street from this hotel and there's like 50 families there, we need to pull in the members of that church, the faith-based community, to support these children because that's why they're supposed to be there. Not sure where everybody is from, but in Memphis, we are in the Bible Belt. There's literally a church and a barbecue shack on every single corner in Memphis. So at least we'll pray for you and feed you when you come. But also build in your support with your faith-based community, your grassroots supporters. This is literally an all hands on deck situation, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. We have seen a huge increase in our numbers here in Memphis, just with everything that is going on. And it's not just hitting one demographic. It's a wide range of people who are suffering right now. And it's our responsibility, my responsibility in this role as a school board member, to make sure that our students are taken care of. That is my main goal, making sure that our children have what they need. So build your circle of support, figure out who's doing what in your community, lock arms with them, serve together. When you lock arms and serve together, you serve more, and you're able to come up with better solutions. And then the second one is passing the policy torch. Always start with your local school board. Anything dealing with children locally, it's going to go through the local school board as far as policy. So start to build those good relationships. Same thing, send an email, participate in public comment, go to your school districts. I don't know how many, we have several districts in Memphis, but the largest one is Shelby County. Go to the district website, wherever it says board member meetings, click on that link and look at the schedule. When's the next board meeting? You can come to every meeting you want to, and you can participate in public comment. It usually happens at the beginning of every meeting. You'll get maybe a minute or two to speak on whatever it is that you're passionate about. Use that opportunity to say, hey, we have children in this neighborhood or in this district who are experiencing homelessness. What are we doing about it? How can I support the work that you're doing? What policies can we implement? Pass the torch. I had someone reach out to me and say, hey, we have an issue with this. Okay, I'll create a policy. That's passing the torch to me. If the issue gets larger, then it's my job as a school board member to pass the torch to city council or county commission. That's the next level up. Then they'll pass it on to our state representatives or our state senators. Then they'll pass it on up to a federal level. Build the relationships with your elected officials, because I guarantee you nothing moves without policy in place. I know I talked for a whole lot. I said a whole lot of stuff. I hope you all caught at least 2 nuggets out of that, because I can talk about this all day long, but really build those relationships. Your elected officials, hold them accountable, hold me accountable in this role. If I say I'm going to do something, do it. As a constituent, as a community member, reach out, let your voice be heard, and let's support these children together.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And everyone, I'm going to give you all a chance to ask Julia questions. I'm sure you have lots of questions, but I think we're going to let Beth speak first, and then we'll do questions for both of you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That is a very tough act to follow, so I will do my best. Thank you so much for your service on the school board, teacher, all the other roles you play. Amazing community leader. So tough role to follow. I usually use Teams, so I'm going to try to share my screen here so that you can, let's see, 1 second. Sorry, so you can see my slides, and then I'll get going. Okay. I apologize here. Okay, can you see it okay? Okay, great. So I just I was asked very kindly by Lisa, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about youth empowerment and how we work in partnership with youth to really work to advocate at the local level. And for us, that means the city of Minneapolis and Hennepin County primarily. And so I'm going to give some examples of that and really highlight some of the amazing young people's efforts who do a lot of amazing leadership and advocacy here. Okay, I'm hoping, okay. So this is just a picture of one of our buildings, the one I'm sitting in right now. We are located in North Minneapolis, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and this is one of our sites. And we have a mural painted on the side that was actually done a few years ago by some of the young people here at the link, which just signifies empowerment and transformation from kind of out of crisis into bigger and better dreams. Just to give you a little snapshot of the link, and I promise not to talk too much about our organization, but just so you know what we do, we are very much a grassroots frontline crisis intervention program here in North Minneapolis. And our mission is to work with youth and families to restore the impacts of poverty and social injustice. And we have a vision of a community supporting all youth and families and having equitable access and opportunity. Just another more brief background is that we're a non-religious organization that was founded in 1991 by 2 Black leaders who they're quite amazing. They also happen to play for what I think is, the greatest NFL team, but I'm a diehard Minnesota fan, even through the bad times. So we were founded by Jim Marshall and Oscar Reed when they retired from the NFL, and they're still very supportive of us to this day and great mentors to me as well as the rest of the staff here. We have grown since the time of they really started us in a very grassroots way 30 years ago. And the 2 of them were volunteering their time, working with young people, just doing whatever it was that they could to help those young people that were getting impacted by crime, getting involved in crime, or were suffering from poverty or homelessness. And so since the 2 of them started our organization, we've now grown within the 30 years to having 164 staff, many of them who are youth. We employ youth here too. We have an $11 million annual operating budget and 23 programs, as Lisa said, that align in 3 areas. So juvenile justice alternative programs, housing, homeless services and housing, and Safe Harbor, which is basically our state's law for providing support through a non-criminalized approach for youth who have been victims of sex trafficking. We're a youth and adult-led organization, so we're a little bit different than most nonprofits in that we have a traditional board of directors that also includes youth who have been through our programs, but we also have 5 youth advisory boards that are paid positions because our nonprofit board is not able to be paid. And so those 5 youth advisory boards actually help guide the organization and lead the organization. They help us to co-design of all of our programs, sit in on interviews for our staff, and provide a lot of leadership for our organization, but also in the wider community, which I'll get into in a minute. This is just an overview of our services for homeless youth. And some of our pictures. This was at Pride. And these are some of our youth leaders and adult staff members. And a young person who just moved into his first apartment with us. So it was pretty great, taking a selfie in the lobby. And what I wanted to just get into, just to say, I should maybe preface this a little bit with the programs that we have are very frontline. We have street outreach, including day, overnight street outreach, drop-in center, homeless prevention programming, emergency shelter, one for homeless youth and one for sex trafficked youth. And then we have a variety, we have 7 housing programs, and 2 of them, one's culture specific for Black youth, one's culture specific for LGBTQ youth. Another one is for young families, and another one is for youth who are aging out of either juvenile justice placement, child welfare placement, or children's mental health placement. So we have a total of 208 units of housing for young people that are experiencing homelessness. So what we do a lot of advocacy too. We're kind of known as one of the more feisty nonprofits around our parts in good ways. And so especially right now, there are so many examples of how to effectively create change at the local level. So the city of Minneapolis, as you know, as the whole world knows, we are going through a lot of advocacy right now to do a lot of change. We are really looking at change across the board. I know that the biggest highlight is within reforming policing in Minneapolis and creating more equitable, basically trying to really eradicate white supremacy and racism from a lot of our different systems, including the Minneapolis Police Department. But anyone who knows that racism transcends not only law enforcement, but many other systems as well. So we're doing a lot of advocacy and change at the city level. Some of those examples, what I will say is I can give a lot of different examples, but I'll give some specific to homelessness that have made a lot of changes to briefly, and then I'll get more into the city ones too. But we have about 3 years ago, we did a application to basically do a lot of advocacy around reforming our homelessness system and response for youth in Hennepin County. And that was done through something called the Hennepin County 100-Day Challenge. And what we did was we had 100 days and we set a goal of really wanting to house at least 150 young people and employ 70% of them within 100 days. And we gathered together not only the homeless youth providers and frontline providers of youth homelessness services and youth themselves, but also youth employment providers. And then we also, to try to really get buy-in for this, we had some of our Hennepin County partners and some commissioners that were involved at kind of what you were referring to, Ms. Harris, as like a grass tops. So we would, kind of get their buy-in so the regular group of us that were kind of on the front lines would meet weekly to work on reforms and advocating for what are the barriers to getting these youth housed and employed. Let's figure that out and make suggestions to these higher group of officials. So one advice I have that we found very successful was to really invite the local politicians in a way that's meaningful for them. So we invited some of the local county commissioners that were more supportive of homelessness to kind of learn about what we were doing, as well as our director, David Hewitt, our director of the city of Minneapolis and Hennepin County has a joint office to end homelessness that's led by David Hewitt. And so we invited him to be what we called kind of like a sponsor or a champion of the 100-day challenge. So sometimes what we found works with city or county officials is to really make them feel and create an opportunity for them to be a part of the work, knowing that they may not be able to do the day-to-day work, but if they're interested and passionate about youth homelessness or juvenile justice reform or trafficking, figure out a way where they can maybe be on an advisory board or committee where they can give some of their input. That's going to help with a lot of buy-in, and it helped us a lot to create a lot of the challenges, a lot of the changes that we had created through the 100-day challenge. After the 100 days was done, we were able to successfully house over 200 youth. So we exceeded our goal of 150, which was quite incredible. And then we also convinced our Hennepin County leadership to develop a county-wide youth advisory committee for homelessness. And that had never happened in the county before. So that was pretty exciting. And so now new policies that are involving youth homelessness need to go before this youth advisory board for input first, which is quite amazing. And it kind of like rocked the system on its head to put youth who have lived experience of homelessness in a role where they're giving input. We, of course, have been trying to get that done for years, but it took the 100-day challenge and the buy-in with these local leaders to get that to happen. We also right now are taking this work a step further, and we built on this work by creating what we call a Hennepin County Grand Challenge Ride or Die team. So it's a small group of us made up of 12 people, the Ride or Die team. So there's youth on that team with lived experience of homelessness providers. And again, we have some county staff, and we are making recommendations to really further what we learned from the 100-day challenge. One of the big things we're trying to do is change the definition of homelessness and the definition of family within Hennepin County so that it reflects truly the experience of homelessness. Right now, they're not including doubled up youth or couch hopping youth, and the definition of family is very narrow and really not reflective of what's going on in the actual community. So those are some examples of how, and we have basically defined, kind of created some proposed definitions that we're going to be bringing to our County Board of Commissioners in a proposal that they requested. So we have met with them ahead of time and kind of talked to them about our ideas and asked them for input for how we could best get the definitions changed, and so are taking steps to do that. So I think my biggest advice of what I've learned is that finding those, as Ms. Harris said, finding those champions, those individuals within your county. In Hennepin, we have a county board of commissioners and then a city council and a mayor. So finding those city council members or county commissioners that are interested in the topic and going to them and asking for their input and genuinely trying to figure out ways to involve them is great ways to get them on board with helping to make changes, is what we found. We're also trying to change the way our county and city do coordinated entry, which, if you're not familiar with that, is HUD's mandate to local communities for how to basically match up youth that are experiencing homelessness with housing vacancies. And the way that our local government does it doesn't really work, just to be quite honest. And so we're really trying to advocate for a lot of changes. And in the meantime, trying to find creative ways to house the young people within the constructs that we have right now. We do just a ton of advocacy with community events and invite young people to be kind of at the table and leading and presenting at any kind of event we can that includes our county commissioners and city council members. What we found is just the power of youth voice is so important. And so anytime there's kind of like a bigger event in our community around homelessness where there's going to be city council members there or going to be county commissioners there, we really try to have young people there to speak, because it's really powerful for those county commission. They don't get to, I get the huge opportunity of working with youth every day. seeing them every day at the link and in the community, but county commissioners and city councilors most oftentimes don't get that opportunity. So having youth sit on panels or speak directly to those people about what they feel like needs to change and hearing from youth directly is also super impactful. So that said, there also is just a lot, like I said, a lot going on in the city of Minneapolis right now. And so I feel like another big thing is we've had several city council members. Unfortunately, there's also in the city of Minneapolis, we're dealing with a lot of efforts, like I said, to reform our police department right now, but also there's a really, really huge been a huge uptick in community violence and shootings in particular. And so, and carjackings, a lot of those involve, not all, but a lot of those involve young people. And so some of our city council members here on the north side have reached out to myself and some of the other outreach partners to kind of do more targeted outreach at homeless encampments, at areas where there's been a lot of shootings and things like that. And so we try to obviously work with those city council members to do as much as we can, but also kind of help educate them about how street outreach works. So I think there's like this delicate balance too of understanding that city council members and county commissioners, you want to advocate and work with them and partner with them. But the other thing is that they don't know how to do our work and we don't know how to do theirs, right? So it's kind of like this partnership of working with them and listening to them and getting their advice for how to make county and city change. But then when they come to you, because there's an issue in the community they want addressed, like gun violence, homelessness, whatever it is, really trying to work with them on figuring out solutions. So some of the things that we've done with our local Minneapolis city council members, especially Council Member Cunningham, is to create specific outreach strategies for some of the encampments and some of the kind of hot spots for shootings here on the north side. And so establishing more of street outreach presence, and that's both through tabling, but also through our traditional outreach approaches, which is to really target and build relationships with the young people there. So we're doing a lot of that right now too. And then also just really trying to work with our with the city council and trying to advocate for positive reforms for different systems, not only policing, but also like child protection, homelessness response, education, so that we can really reform all systems to be equitable. And we know that the issues go far beyond one particular individual or one particular system. So we're really trying hard to do that. But there is absolutely a lot going on in terms of like the local advocacy here in the city of Minneapolis. And so it was a good time for us to have that conversation. So at the end of the day, what I would say is, number one, don't ever underestimate the impact of youth leadership. We have, all the change that's going on here in Minneapolis, like I said, is really being co-led by youth and young people. So we've actually are so well known for what I think just makes sense about providing opportunities for youth leadership that our local Minneapolis NAACP has reached out, because they're working on creating a youth council within the Minneapolis NAACP, and they've been a longtime partner of ours. They do amazing work here and are leading a lot of the great racial equity work here in the city of Minneapolis. But I'm super excited that they want to do more around cultivating youth leadership. And right now we have Angela Rose in there, who's the youngest NAACP president our city's ever had. So she's 26, so it's pretty exciting. So at any rate, I hope that this kind of leads you with some examples. But again, having youth involved in the forefront of speaking to city and county officials, having them genuinely listening to them on what they believe the needed changes are, and then working in partnership with them to advocate for those changes from a grassroots level, and then working with the people from the politicians from the grass tops, I think, and building that relationship together is so critical and important. And so that's how we've seen a lot of the change get done here in Minneapolis. There's way more that we need to do and are working on, but we've also made a lot of progress within the last 5 to 10 years as well. So I hope that let me see here. This is just a picture of, oh, this is a fun picture. This is some of us that were on the 100-day challenge team. Literally, we were at a site where we were building more housing. And this was another 100-day challenge. We combined our coordinated entry assessors, and then youth employers came in for like a job and housing fair in the same location, which was really great. And that was something we did through the 100-day challenge. So we had, for example, the Mall of America was there. This is pre-COVID. The Mall of America was there so they could do on-site interviews with youth for jobs. And then we had Hennepin County coordinated entry assessors agreed to be on site too, so they could get assessed for housing in one place. And then this is some of our amazing young people, Fawn and LaRonda, who were speaking at a panel to the county commissioners about what needed to change in Hennepin County at our Heading Home Hennepin annual meeting, which there were several county commissioners in the audience, and they came up and talked to the young people afterwards for about half an hour. It was great. So that is kind of what I had to share, but I'm happy to talk more and answer questions too. And I want to respect the timeline of the meeting, but I'm truly honored to be a part of this meeting. And thank you, Lisa, for asking Ms. Harris and I to be here.
Thank you both. That was so terrific. Okay, so I see Beth sharing contact information. And I think if just in a minute, if you want to like exit out of that, just so everyone can see each other, and then we'll open it up for questions. But I can add Beth's contact information to the information about the meeting that we have up. And I'm going to also add Beth's slides on there too, so you guys have that. Okay. Okay. So we have set aside a good amount of time for questions. So please, any questions that you have for our speakers or for me or Patricia, we're happy to answer them. I'll give you just a minute. And feel free to unmute yourself or to ask in the chat, whatever is best for you.
Lisa, I know I probably, oh, Roxana, yeah. No, my bad, you can go ahead. No, I'd rather hear you. I was just gonna break the ice, but I'd rather have you break the ice. Thanks, Roxana. So hi, Ms. Harris and Ms. Holger. I'm Roxana. I'm a youth voice action council member in Miami. And I was invited by Patricia. I'm blown away by both your nonprofit organizations, what they've been doing to make equity in the homeless systems. It's been things that across the nation and across the board, people have been trying to do, but have encountered more barriers than in other places. So I'm happy to see that you guys are breaking those barriers and are able to get that done. But now I did want to ask a specific question to Ms. Holger. You mentioned that because of the 100-day challenge where you got service providers, but you also got community leaders as well involved. Because of that, you guys were not only able to serve more youth, but also able to kind of like establish a youth like liaison, right? Like it was like a group of youth. It was like an advisory board. But what I didn't catch was if it was at the county or city systems. And so I wanted to ask you about that because we've been meeting with county commissioners, and they have expressed an interest here in Miami to do that, but we're still getting like some pushback.
That's
so any advice that you would have, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that question, Roxana. That's a great question. And it actually, it took way longer, and it really took the emphasis of the 100-day challenge to help with it. For a long time, we have been saying youth should absolutely be involved in leading the discussions and the decision and policies around the youth homelessness response, right? It should not be up to a smaller group of staff that work at the county or the city that haven't ever experienced homelessness and that oftentimes don't represent racially the group of young people experiencing homelessness in our local area. So it took a long time, and it's tough because it means sharing power, right? And giving away some of that power, sharing more power knowledge. But we were able to do this by, I think, helping to get kind of our director of the Office to End Homelessness involved in the 100-day challenge, so that he heard from youth directly and multiple people. And it wasn't just like Beth Holger or the link, trying to get him to change this policy, but it was kind of a whole, community-wide response. And so I think one thing that would help is if you got a group of young people, and maybe you already have, but a group of young people or a group of providers together to kind of create a proposal of why you want the city of Miami or the county, is it Miami-Dade? I don't know what county. Why you want them to create this youth advisory board and what you think the benefits of it would be. And so I think that helps a lot. One of the interesting things, though, I will say that our county really struggled with getting it up and running too, was that we wanted to compensate youth. And it's so much easier when we have a youth advisory board at the link. Like, okay, we'll just pay them with stipends, gift cards, or if they want to join us as an employee. So it's really pretty fast. But as a county or a city, they have a lot more bureaucracy with just getting a simple thing like gift cards for the youth. Right. And so one thing I will say to that, that sometimes helps is if there's a city or a county that can just do kind of like a sub grant to a nonprofit that can then go out and purchase those gift cards or those stipends and provide it for the youth instead of the city or the county. So if they talk about payment and how hard that is, one idea is to do that. And then, the other idea too, that, it's amazing how there's so much money in the city and the county that you absolutely should have money to be able to pay a youth council. But if they say no, then sometimes what I've done is I have said, well, we'll fundraise, we'll find, $500 to start, right? So that we have, from the link. And then from there, at least get it started until that they can start paying the young people. But oftentimes that's a big hiccup. Like, how are we going to pay the young people? So just we do that. And then also, like, how are they going to recruit the young people? They're probably going to rely on people like you to do that. And so absolutely we do that too. We help recruit young people from the link, from other nonprofits, from the community to be on the board, because it's not necessarily, the county staff may not have those relationships with young people to be able to do that. So I don't know if does that help? Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. Great question. And please reach out to me if you want any. I love having a youth involved in an advisory board. So reach out if you want any job descriptions, payment, anything like that. I'm happy to share anything.
Thank you.
There are a couple of questions in the chat too. I know it's hard when you're answering a question to also be reading, but I'll read them out loud. One of the questions was, how long do you think it will take to change the definition of homelessness to better represent your homeless population?
Is that one directed towards us too?
Probably, because I think you were the one who talked about it. Sorry.
I will say we've already been working on it for 3 or 4 years now. So I hate to say that and what has happened, at least here, is that it's been super challenging to get those changed. And it seems like a simple thing, but there are so many different definitions, from the federal to the state, to the city, to the county. And so it's been really complicated. Or they'll say, oh, we have to use this definition of family because that's what MFIP, which stands for Minnesota Family Investment Program, which is kind of like, for lack of a better word, like our family welfare program. That's what their definition is. So if we change the homelessness definition of family, it won't relate to that one. And so we're just trying to, so there's a lot of this going on right now, like pointing at another person, another jurisdiction, another office's responsibility around that, but we're not going to give up, because what's happening is that right now, the only youth that are qualifying as homeless per our county and city is if they're currently living in an emergency shelter or a place unfit for human habitation, like riding the light rail or bus all night, and it's been documented by a street outreach worker. So obviously there's a lot of youth. We don't even have enough shelter beds for all the homeless youth. So how can we, it just doesn't make sense. So we're really, really working on it. And there's, as we know, so many other places that youth are creative to stay in safe or unsafe places that truly are homeless. So we're going to keep going, but it's honestly been, I wish I could say, oh, 2 months from now we'll have it all changed, but it has been a long time, but we'll keep at it until it changes. So hopefully, I'm hoping within the next year or two, but we will see. If anybody else out there has examples of how they change their definitions locally, please reach out to me after this. I could definitely use your advice. We all could.
So I have a couple examples, and this question is kind of, it depends on where you are, honestly, for the time frame of it. There are a few layers that can actually be in motion at the same time. For example, I'll give you a school district example. I have to tell people, stop saying homeless children. They are youth that are experiencing homelessness. It seemed really small, but that shift in our language changed the perspective on that child. They're just experiencing homelessness right now. Don't put that label on that child. So started with something simple like that. As far as getting the actual definition changed, we have not done that yet in Memphis. However, here's a potential step that we could take. It's going to have to go through our county commissioners first. What we could do is just say, hey, I have this idea, would like to change the language on our homeless population, specifically youth that are experiencing this right now. Here's some language that I want to push forward. That goes back to who's your champion. Figure out who's on your county commission or whatever you all call it that would want to push this forward, because you got that champion is going to take this policy and present it at their next committee meeting. From the committee meeting, they're going to talk about it. Then they're going to push it to put on the agenda for the next actual business meeting, which they'll have a vote. So that's why I keep pressing, find your champions, your elected officials that are champions. They're the ones that are going to push the work forward. If it's local level, you really just need one person to bring it up and put it on the agenda. If you're looking at state level, you're going to need two. You're going to need a state senator to be a sponsor. You're going to need a state house representative to be a sponsor. But back to the local level, find that one champion, say, hey, I want to push this forward. Here's why it's important. Here's the language. Here's the solution. Can you put this on the next agenda to talk about it? I'll come and do public comment to give further testimony on why it's important that we do this. That cycle can take us as short as 30 days, depending on how the meetings are. For in Memphis, we have once a month. I think maybe committee meetings are 2 to 3 times a month. It can happen within a 30-day cycle. But like Beth, like you said, it could take longer than that. It just depends on where you are and who you have as your champion and the type of pressure that you are putting on them. I will say this, we can use this to our advantage. No elected official wants to be the one person that does not support a child. No one wants that on their back at all. And so use that to your advantage. And when you have young people speaking during public comment to push this, everybody's going to listen to a child speak. Now, if adults get up there and they start talking, okay, we might listen, we might be on our phones, but if we see a child, we're going to like, oh, okay, what are they talking about? Well, we need to help them out. Just pull on people's heartstrings. I say use your emotional intelligence to get things done. But that's as far as going back to the question, as far as changing the definition of homelessness, we have not done that full speed in Memphis yet. But if we were to go that route, it could be 30 days and we'll do it with our county commissioners.
Thank you. So I'm going to read another question from the chat. Either of our speakers can answer this, but I think the question is also directed at other participants. So if any other participants have any thoughts on this. The question says, we seem to have lots of funding and ideas, to support our youth. However, we can't find the people to fill those positions. How are others addressing this problem? So for either of our speakers or anyone on the call who has thoughts on this.
I've never heard of anyone having the money but can't find people. We've had the opposite issue. I would want to ask the question back, how are you advertising the roles, the positions that you need? How are you presenting the need for those positions? I think that would be my question back. Because if you have the funding to do it, I don't know why you wouldn't have enough folks to want to take the roles, but I want to know how you're advertising or presenting the positions.
That came from me. I'm Stephanie Quinlan out of Indianapolis. We have gotten art funding and all of that, and we just can't seem to get our positions filled. We've been advertising on state websites. We put them on local websites. We are out there. I talk in the community, and my social workers talk out in the community. Whenever we're out and about, we've connected with universities and colleges for new graduates to come and fill some positions. It's just, and now we were at a meeting just this morning with our Department of Education, and they're going to try and get some more navigators to help those school districts that have high homelessness population numbers. And, you know, that's just fearful. We have positions that aren't getting filled anywhere. I mean, education, you know, teachers, any kind of support staff. So I just didn't know, as we're trying to help our families who are experiencing homelessness right now, we can get, people keep giving us money. We don't, but there's only so many people that can do the work. So I didn't know. So really, we're the only ones experiencing this problem?
I was going to say, not exactly, because I do think what we've seen at the link in the last is that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it has made it tougher for us. It's a little bit different situation, right? But I would never say like, oh, we have all this money. That's not true. We need way more money than not just the link, but I mean the entire homelessness community here does. However, we have seen, which I think resonates for me about your comments, we have seen, we have had a harder time filling our open positions for our emergency shelter and housing programs. And I think because of the fact that during COVID-19, there's a lot of people that don't want to work in a site-based program. You know, they're worried about the pandemic, which I absolutely understand, but working with youth experiencing homelessness, like if you're working in street outreach, shelter, housing, or these 24/7 type programs, we're similar to other, you know, first line industries where we can't just go remote. You know, our governor, we were part of the mandate to stay open during even the height of it. And so I think what we've seen is just like people want more of a remote work job right now because of COVID. And so we're, you know, it is, I love it. This is the only career I've ever had. I absolutely love this work, would never do anything different. But there's a lot of people that would rather work, you know, virtually right now. And so that's just not an option. We can't leave the youth, you know, unattended in shelter. So that's been challenging for us to find staff more recently. So that might be, I don't know if that's the same reason why in Indianapolis, but why you're having trouble finding people to fill the positions with the money available. But we're definitely seeing that in Minneapolis.
So Stephanie, if I don't know something, I'm going to say I don't know, and I do not have a clear answer for this. I will offer myself to be a thought partner with you and helping figure out a solution.
I appreciate that. And I seeing on the chat that there's others who say they're having some struggle with that. And that's all through education. And it may change in the next few months. The thing we have with our funding is we don't have funding to buy stuff or things or pay bills. They're specific funding for people. I don't want to think that we have millions and millions of just throwing about and holding in front of people hoping they apply for a job. It's just they've been government funding, whether it's federal or state level, that have specific expectations for the funding. So we're spending the things. We can always get things and stuff. It's the people we can't get. I appreciate your time and those who can think it through, and maybe you'll come up with something. I'll pose it again.
Yeah, there seem to be a few other comments in the chat. Thank you guys for being so active on there. So we'll definitely take more questions for our speakers. The other thing I'd love to open it up for, if anybody on the call wants to share any local advocacy that you've done, we would love to hear about that as well. And I'm sure your peers would love to hear about it as well.
One thing, Stephanie, I forgot to mention was just that some things we're trying to do more of is really utilize social media to post, and you might already be doing that, but so if our youth, like really pushing our youth, our current staff and youth to like push out the job opportunities on their Facebook, like their personal networks. And then if they hire, if a referral comes in through a youth or an adult staff of ours or youth program participant, then, and they're hired, then we give that person a $50 referral incentive. And I know it doesn't seem like a ton of money, but it does help a little bit, or at least spark the interest. So we are doing that. And then we're trying to, it's hard because we don't have a big HR department or anything, but trying to get out to more, get our job postings to any community events we go to, so we can at least pass them out. Because historically we've done a lot of outreach, but we're like, oh, we should get our job postings out to like Black State Fair, Pride, all those different like community events that we're at. So we're trying to do things like that, but it's definitely a challenge. So those things are helping a little bit though.
Any other questions for either of our speakers, or anyone want to share any local advocacy while you're thinking about that? I mean, I think one other thing is that if you do some professional development with your youth leadership boards, those young people can, grow into taking staff positions. And I know several people who, are members of youth advocacy boards or used to be, but also have staff positions at different providers. And so those are really going to be your best, possible staff members once they're, done with school and in a position to focus on a full-time job, especially if you sort of help them develop the skills they need along the way. Obviously, that's a long-term solution. That's not going to hire someone tomorrow, but just something to keep in mind.
Lisa, I thought about something as you just made that comment. If your organization has the capacity to provide training on how to identify students, what to do if you're a teacher in the classroom, what to do if you're a counselor, make sure that you're a vendor for your local school district. Just get on the vendor list. It's easy for principals or school leaders to choose your organization and go in and just provide that support, at least offer to do that Mckinney-Vento training for your school district. You can be, the organization that they go to. I'm saying this because there is of course, mandatory Mckinney-Vento training that every educator, school leader, anyone coming in contact with children in a district has to go through this training. But from my experiences, it's so bland, especially the state level training, it's so bland and boring. And a lot of times it's just, okay, you got to do it, mark off, check, I did this today, we're good to go. But if you are an organization, you have the capacity to do that, that's another way to build relationships and get your supporters on the ground, to go in and give more hands-on support to teachers, because our numbers have increased significantly. It is September. We actually started school early August. We start a little bit earlier in Memphis. But based on our low numbers last year, we've surpassed that already this year. And the call that I had earlier, we had those 26 new families, but it was over 100 children within those 26 families now. So our numbers are increasing all over the place. And so if you have the capacity as your organization to provide that additional hands-on, a little more qualitative support and training for your districts, please do that. Our school board members will vote on it. I'll vote on it. Yes, we want that. Please help us. But if you have the capacity, please offer that service to your districts.
One thing, so are we allowed to unmute and just, sorry, I came in late, but so one local advocacy thing that we had started doing here in Pittsburgh, there's a group that came about around the beginning of the pandemic called the Pittsburgh Learning Collaborative, and it's mostly made up of like a group of out of school time providers that meet once a month or once every couple of weeks to talk about like what's going on at school and how they can support students in school. And that has been a really great way for us. So I work for a nonprofit that focuses on students experiencing homelessness, like student education of students experiencing homelessness. So contributing our voice to those discussions has really like amplified what we're able to do by you know, getting a lot of other names and a lot of other voices and weight behind it. So that's been super helpful for us. And we've also, through that group, they've started just sort of tracking the local school. So one of the organizations in that group is a school advocacy organization, and they have been doing like a lot of advocacy at the board level, and they've started tracking all the board meetings and like the minutes and resolutions and like big votes coming up and things like that, and having a publicly available calendar for all of the organizations that participate, which has been super powerful in terms of like our ability to know when stuff is going on and like participate and submit testimony and that sort of thing. So just like that sort of, I don't know, that level of administration and organization has done a lot for us, I think, and communication with all the other folks that are out there.
Thanks for sharing that, Brian. Any other questions for our speakers, or just things you want to put out to your peers, or examples of local advocacy? Okay, feel free to add anything in the chat if you think of it later. I'm going to take 1 minute just to share a resource. Let's see if I can share my screen. Okay. Hopefully you can all see this. I'm going to assume yes. So just real quick, and there's a link to this on the page that I shared in the chat, but we just wanted you to have a few starting points, especially if you're new to local advocacy. So there's just a few things on this page that we're going to share. So some basic stuff in terms of just trying to figure out, you know, what is the role of the city versus the county, you know, or where can I find examples of other counties that are working on different issues if I want to show my county that they should be interested in this. A lot of these materials are going to come from the sort of member associations for the cities and the counties. So you'll see a bunch of links on here from the National League of Cities, as well as some from the National Association of Counties. I won't go into all of them, but basically just, you know, there's some basic information here on the structure, but then there's also some more substantive. So you'll see there's an example here about early childhood success or justice initiatives. And that's just a way to sort of get a sense of what the language is that each of these people speak, right? So if you're talking to a mayor's office, they're going to speak about things in a certain way. And if you're talking to county officials, there are some terms that they're going to use, or there's ways that they might frame the exact same issues you're working on, but just sort of frame them in a different way. So reading some of these materials, I think, will help you kind of speak their language. And then there's some more general, you know, here's some information on lobbying or building relationships specifically with elected officials. And then again, sort of getting back to that, how do counties or cities think about some of these issues? There are few resources on here specifically about homelessness from the National Association of Counties and the National League of Cities. This is good background information for you, but it's also, you know, if you're meeting with someone in the mayor's office or someone from your county council, having this in a folder to say like your national organization says this about homelessness is sometimes really helpful. So we just wanted you to have these different resources. The link to them is on that page that I shared in the chat. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, so the last few minutes, if there are no other questions, I think we just wanted to take a step back and get some input from all of you about our next meeting. And just to give you a sense, we're about 6 months into this community of practice. So we're going to be spending a little bit of time as a group, not just for the next meeting, but just sort of trying to check in with you on what's working, what else would be helpful, and so on. So I'm going to turn it over in just a minute to Patricia to run us through some questions that we want your input on so we can plan for our next meeting. But I just want to one more time thank our speakers for their insightful presentations. Let all of you know that since this was recorded, the recording will be on the SchoolHouse Connection state policy page. And then you can also click on that link to see the slides and to get links to both of their organizations. So thank you guys so much. And thank you also to our participants for actually participating so that Patricia and I did not have to just ask all of the questions. Yeah, so there's a question about, so there will be a link to the recording. I don't know if that actually includes all of the information that's in the chat. If not, Patricia or I can pull out the information from the chat and put it on the document that everyone signed in on. I'll put that link one more time, but that also includes the resources from the meeting. It includes our presenters' names, titles, and links to their organizations. So I'm going to put this in the chat one more time. And that's kind of like our shared page where we keep a lot of information from each meeting. So you'll be able to get whatever relevant information you need from that page. If for some reason you don't see something there that you need, and give us maybe a day or two to get everything up there, feel free to send me an email directly. I'm going to put my email in the chat. You can just email me directly if there's something you were looking for that you did not find on there, and I'm happy to send it to you or add it to that page. But thank you again, everyone. So for our October meeting, originally the community practice was going to meet every other month, and there was not going to be a meeting on October. And then we were thinking about doing some breakout groups by region, but what we actually thought we would do is just have a few minutes right now to talk to all of you about what would be most useful, and that will help us decide what to do in October. So thank you, Patricia.
Thanks, Lisa. And I just put a link in the chat. If you go to that link while I go through the process here of sharing my screen, this is just going to be a very, very quick poll where hopefully we can get some quick information from you about what would be best for you for the next meeting. So hang on a second while I go through this. You hopefully are already able to be accessing that link. Yep, I see some people are already voting. I'm going to work on trying to share my screen here in just a sec. There we go. Okay. So feel free, if you don't mind, go ahead, put your vote in. Are you interested in October meeting? We understand people are really busy. We don't need to fill your life with another meeting if this is something that you're not interested in. So far, I'm not seeing any no's, so that's a pretty good sign.
We did give you a no option.
We did, yes. We were trying to be honest here. We gave you no option, so this all looks pretty good. Let's see if I can advance. I think now that I'm sharing my screen, my poll does not want me to be able to advance. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, see if I can make this work. Okay, are you all on your websites, on that Mentimeter website, seeing a second question? It seems like perhaps you are not. Maybe refresh your screen on that Mentimeter website. There we go. Now I see people are able to access it. We'd love to know if you'd rather have a meeting similar to this one with just a big group and some speakers and the opportunity to ask questions and share, or if breakout groups would be more useful to you. So I can see that you're voting. I'm not even going to try to share my screen so that I don't wreak havoc on this again, but I can see that you all are voting. So far, it looks like more people are preferring a big meeting rather than breakout groups. So that's perfectly fine. Makes sense. Okay, and now I just want to ask, if we do breakout groups at some point in the future, whether this is in October or at another time in the future, how would you like those breakout groups to be constituted? We were thinking we can do them by region, but we could also do them by level of experience. And we could also do it specifically by issue area. I know we have a lot of people here are from schools. We have others who are from service providers. So maybe issue area is a better way to do it. So let us know what you think about the best way to configure breakout groups if we do those in the future. And I can see the votes coming in. So thank you very much for that as well.
And I'll add, I don't see the results right now because I'm trying to keep in this screen, but since it sounds like there may be a preference not to do the breakout groups, but to do topics as we've been doing. If there are specific topics you'd be interested in, please let me know. One topic I can tell you might be an option just because it's something that I work on a lot, so pull together speakers on, but I'm curious if people are interested, is just advocating collaboratively across fields. So for example, Beth, I've already invited to speak this time, but if I hadn't, I would put her on an agenda for such a thing because she, her organization does both youth homelessness, but also juvenile justice. So, would you be interested in sort of learning about or hearing from organizations that collaborate on youth homelessness issues, but also with other sectors? Are you interested in having a topic area, specific to minors experiencing homelessness, or a little bit more specific to school-based issues, or Mckinney-Vento? So any kind of topics that you think would be useful, please feel free to just drop them in the chat. And yes, we will definitely try to include as often as possible individuals with relevant lived experience as speakers for the different meetings that we have. Thank you for raising that, Brooke, and for responding, Patricia. So as we're finishing the poll, if anyone has any ideas on topics they'd like to see covered in future meetings, if you wouldn't mind just adding that in the chat, since that's not going to be a poll question, that would be terrific. Patricia, do you want to share the results so far with us?
Yeah, I can tell you that definitely the winner in terms of an October meeting looks like was maybe to have one, but to keep it as a large group. And then I can just share this is in terms of how, if we do breakout meetings in the future, how we could configure those. And it's mostly about similar issues and similar experience and not so much geography. So that's great to know. We'll definitely follow the will of the people.
Yeah, we'll change our October plan. So we're glad that we asked you. Thank you for that. And for is it a clear margin? Like, are we pretty sure we're going to do a subject matter for the next?
Yeah, I don't know if I can go back to it, but it was like,
no, that's fine.
It was, I think 2 people voted for breakouts or something. Everybody else wanted a big group.
No, that's fine. This is why we asked. So we're really happy for this input. And I'm seeing some great suggestions in the chat box. So there's a suggestion that we talk about art funding, which is actually very funny because a different coalition I work with it is focusing a lot on art funding, and I invited Patricia to come in and speak to them because Schoolhouse has been doing so much work on the art funding. So we definitely can share some information on that, and even if it's not immediately one of our topics, maybe we'll make sure that we let you guys know about all of Schoolhouse's resources on that. So Linda, if I can just ask you to clarify, it says transitional living programs for youth aging out. Do you mean youth aging out of foster care or all systems? Just curious, so we can target that to what you're interested in. I see that there is some interest in minors experiencing homelessness, also working with youth who are actively abusing substances and how we can work on that. And I see we're talking about TLPs for youth aging out of all systems. Terrific. And there's a request from Brian for a focus on school level advocacy. So, I mean, these all definitely seem very doable. If you want to second any particular topic, feel free to do that, just so we know. Otherwise, I think these are all things that we could do. Okay, so that's 2 votes for art funding. Sounds good. We can push that up a little bit on our list. And if you think of anything, I always say this on pretty much every meeting I'm ever on. If you think of something after we're off the call and you're going about your work and you have a question or you have an idea, please feel free to email me, because I'm definitely that person that has the great idea 2 days later. So if you are that person too, definitely email me and let me know. I'm going to send you my email address again in the chat so you've got it. And make sure I'm sending this to everyone in the meeting, not everyone in the waiting room, otherwise it won't be as useful. Okay, and then just in terms of other next steps, actually, okay, there's my email address. In terms of other next steps, it sounds like we will be doing an October meeting that will be on a topic area. We had also previously planned for a November 10th meeting that would be a bit of an end of year review. We can keep that topic, although we may also check in with you guys on the October call to make sure that's still what is of interest to people. Another thing we will be doing over the next month or so is, again, we're sort of at the 6-month mark for this group, this collaborative and community of practice. So I think we're going to try to do a little bit more checking in with you just to see what's useful, what's not, what you're still interested in, and just making sure we're hitting the mark. We're going to encourage you for our next meeting to bring a friend. We've had a great turnout, and I know this is a hard week for people coming back from Labor Day. Everyone's busy, so we really appreciate this. But the more people we have at the table, the more we can share with each other and learn from each other. So we're going to really encourage you to bring a friend or help us spread the word about these meetings so that we can have an even bigger turnout in the future. And so that's sort of our plans going forward. If you guys have any ideas for how to make this collaborative even more useful, how to help it reach more people, please let Patricia or I know. We are really going to be focusing on that for the next couple of months, just sort of building up the community of practice and helping it grow. So I think that's it. Patricia, unless you have any other questions or updates.
No, I'm just really grateful for everyone's time today, and particularly to Shalia and Beth. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having us. This is a wonderful group.
All right,
Okay,
and have a
so
nice afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we're going to give you a few minutes back in your day. So thank you all so much. And enjoy. And one more thank you to our presenters. We really appreciate your time.